The cage door was already open when Marcus Reed stepped into the tiger enclosure that September morning. He didn't notice at first. The sun was cutting through the Oklahoma dust, painting everything gold and red, and the smell of raw chicken hung thick in the air. Somewhere behind him, a macaw screamed. The radio on his belt crackled with static. And in the shadows, 400 pounds of muscle and hunger watched him with eyes like amber fire. This is the story of a man who loved animals more than he feared them. And that love, in the end, became the thing that killed him. Marcus Reed wasn't supposed to die that day. He had plans, a daughter's birthday party that weekend, a new truck he'd been saving for, bills spread across his kitchen table that still needed paying. But none of that mattered now, because in the final 7 minutes of his life, Marcus would learn what every zookeeper secretly knows but never speaks aloud. The animals you trust are still wild, and wildness doesn't forgive mistakes. The tiger's name was Sasha. She was 12 years old, born in a breeding facility in Texas, sold to a private collector in Missouri, and finally dumped at the Red Valley Exotic Animal Park when she became too expensive to feed. Marcus had known her for 6 years. He'd watched her pace the same 15 feet of concrete every single day, back and forth, until the path was worn smooth. He'd seen the madness creeping into her eyes, the way captivity hollows out a predator from the inside. But he stayed. He always stayed, because Marcus Reed believed he could save them. He was 51 years old the morning he died, though he looked older. The sun had carved lines into his face, deep as canyons. His hands were scarred from bites and scratches, his knuckles swollen from years of dragging feed buckets and wrestling chains. He walked with a limp, courtesy of a llama kick 3 years back that never healed right. His wife had left him in 2015. Couldn't stand the smell of him anymore, she said. Couldn't stand coming second to a zoo full of animals nobody wanted. But Marcus didn't see it that way. He saw himself as a guardian, a last line of defense between these creatures and the world that had thrown them away. He'd grown up in rural Oklahoma, the kind of place where Friday night lights and church on Sunday were the only things that mattered. His daddy raised cattle, expected Marcus to do the same, but Marcus had always been different. Soft, his daddy called him. Too gentle for the work of men. When Marcus was 9, he found an injured hawk in the pasture, wings broken, dying slow. His daddy wanted to shoot it, put it out of its misery. Marcus begged to try and save it. He kept that hawk in a cardboard box in his room for 3 weeks, feeding it scraps of meat, cleaning its wounds with peroxide that stung his own cuts when he wasn't careful. The hawk died anyway, but something in Marcus was born. After high school, he drifted, worked construction, did some time at a meatpacking plant, tried his hand at truck driving. Nothing stuck. Then in 2004, he saw an ad in the local paper. Exotic animal caretaker wanted. No experience necessary. The pay was garbage, barely minimum wage, but Marcus didn't care. He showed up the next morning at dawn, found himself standing in front of a rusted gate with a hand-painted sign that read, Red Valley Exotic Animal Park. See real lions, tigers, and bears. It was a dump. 20 acres of hard Oklahoma clay, cages made from chain link and prayer, animals that looked like they'd given up on living years ago. The owner, a man named Dale Hodgins, was a failed real estate developer who had gotten into exotic animals because he thought it'd make him rich. It didn't. But Dale had a gift for buying up unwanted animals from bankrupt circuses, shut down roadside zoos, private owners who'd bitten off more than they could chew. He'd acquire them cheap, charge tourists $5 a head to gawk, and pocket whatever was left after feeding them. Marcus took the job, started at the bottom, mucking out cages, hauling bags of expired meat donated by local grocery stores. The other workers didn't last long. Most quit within a month, couldn't handle the smell or the danger, or the heartbreak of watching beautiful animals waste away in cages too small for their souls. But Marcus stayed. He learned their names, their habits, the way each one moved and breathed and dreamed. He learned that Sasha hated thunder, that she'd pace faster when storms rolled in, her breath coming quick and panicked. He learned that if he sat outside her cage and hummed softly, she'd sometimes come close. Close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her eyes. 6 years. That's how long Marcus and Sasha had known each other. Long enough that he'd started to believe she trusted him. Long enough that he'd stopped being afraid. Sasha was a Bengal tiger, one of the most dangerous predators on the planet. Full grown, she weighed 420 pounds. Every ounce of it evolved for killing. Her canines were 3 inches long, designed to punch through the spines of water buffalo and drag them into rivers. Her paws, the size of dinner plates, hid claws that could open a man from collar to hip in a single swipe. In the wild, Bengal tigers have a territory of up to 60 square miles. They hunt alone, silent as ghosts, capable of taking down prey twice their size. Sasha's territory was a cage 20 feet by 30 feet, concrete floor, corrugated metal roof. No grass, no trees, no water deep enough to swim in. Just a blue plastic kiddie pool that cracked in the summer heat and a tractor tire she could barely fit through. She'd been living like that for 8 years. The madness had set in slowly. First, the pacing. Then, the repetitive head movements, side to side, like she was trying to shake something loose inside her skull. Then came the moments of dissociation, where she'd stare at nothing, eyes glazed, body frozen mid-step. Zoochosis, it's called. The psychological breakdown of captive animals. It happens in roadside zoos across America, in places where profit matters more than welfare, where animals are seen as attractions rather than living beings. Marcus saw it happening. He knew Sasha was slipping away, piece by piece, but he told himself he was helping, that his presence made a difference, that the soft words he whispered through the chain link were enough. They weren't. There had been warnings, small ones at first, easy to ignore. 3 months before Marcus died, Sasha had lunged at the fence when a visitor got too close, slamming her full weight against the chain link hard enough to bend the metal. Dale had shrugged it off. "She's just playing," he'd said, grinning like it was all part of the show. 2 months later, she'd refused to eat for 5 straight days, sitting in the back corner of her cage, staring at the walls. Marcus had been worried enough to call a vet, but Dale said no. Too expensive. "She'll eat when she's hungry," he'd insisted. She did, eventually. But something had shifted. The other workers noticed it too. Jenny, the 19-year-old part-timer who sold tickets at the front gate, had started avoiding Sasha's enclosure entirely. "She looks at me wrong," Jenny said one afternoon, shivering despite the heat, "like she's imagining what I taste like." Carlos, the maintenance guy who'd been there almost as long as Marcus, had been more direct. "That cat's gonna kill someone," he'd said, standing outside the cage with a wrench in his hand, staring at Sasha like she was a ticking bomb. "And my money's on you, Marcus. You're the one who thinks she's your friend." Marcus had laughed it off, said Carlos was being dramatic. But late at night, alone in his trailer, Marcus sometimes wondered if Carlos was right. Sometimes, when he closed his eyes, he saw Sasha's face pressed against the fence, heard the low rumble in her chest that wasn't quite a growl, but wasn't affection either. He ignored those thoughts, pushed them down deep where he kept all the other doubts about his life. September 14th started like any other day. Marcus woke at 5:30, brewed coffee so strong it tasted like tar, and drove the 12 miles to Red Valley in his rusted-out Ford pickup. The sky was gray, threatening rain, and the air had that electric feeling that comes before a storm. The parking lot was empty except for Dale's Escalade and Carlos's van. The tourists wouldn't arrive for another 3 hours. Marcus grabbed the feed cart from the storage shed, loaded it with buckets of chicken, and started his rounds. Lions first, then the bears, then the bobcats. He worked methodically, muscle memory taking over, his mind drifting to his daughter's birthday party. She was turning 8. He'd promised her a cake shaped like a unicorn and a trip to the real zoo in Oklahoma City, the kind with educational programs and clean enclosures and animals that didn't look like they wanted to die. By 7:15, Marcus was standing outside Sasha's cage. She was pacing already. That same hypnotic loop, 15 feet forward, pivot, 15 feet back. Her eyes tracked him as he approached, and for just a second Marcus felt something cold crawl up his spine. Something that whispered, "Not today, don't go in today." He ignored it. He always did. The feeding protocol was simple, written in faded ink on a laminated card taped to the fence. Do not enter enclosure alone. Always use feeding chute. Lock all gates before approaching animal. It was the kind of rule that gets made after someone gets hurt. The kind everyone knows, but no one really follows when you've been doing this job long enough that the danger feels routine. Marcus had been breaking that rule for years. It was faster to just step inside, dump the food, and step back out. Sasha had never given him trouble before. Why would today be different? He unlocked the outer gate, stepped into the safety corridor, a narrow space between the outer fence and the inner cage. The corridor was designed so that if something went wrong, you could slam the inner gate and trap the animal inside. But the inner gate was heavy, ancient, the kind of rusted metal that screamed when you moved it. Marcus hated the noise. It spooked the animals, made them agitated. So he left it open. Just a crack, enough to slip through. That crack was 6 inches wide, wide enough for a tiger to notice, wide enough for instinct to kick in. Marcus stepped into the enclosure, feed bucket in hand, eyes on the ground. He didn't see Sasha's posture change, didn't see the way her muscles coiled, didn't see her stop mid-pace and turn, fully, toward him. He didn't see the way her pupils dilated, the way her ears pinned back, the way every predatory instinct in her body suddenly locked onto the moving target in her space. He looked up too late. Sasha was already moving. 400 pounds of tiger launched across 20 feet of concrete in less than 2 seconds. Moving so fast, she was a blur of orange and black and pure, ancient violence. Marcus had just enough time to drop the bucket, just enough time to throw his arms up in a useless gesture of defense before Sasha hit him like a freight train. The impact knocked him off his feet, slammed him into the concrete hard enough to crack ribs. The air exploded from his lungs, his vision went white, then red, and then the pain started, sharp and huge and everywhere at once. Sasha's jaws closed around his shoulder, her canines punching through muscle and bone with a sound like wet branches breaking. Marcus screamed, a sound he didn't recognize, raw and animal and desperate. He tried to fight. Instinct took over, adrenaline flooding his system, and he swung wildly, his fist connecting with Sasha's face. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she shook her head, the way a dog shakes a toy, and Marcus felt something tear deep inside his shoulder. The world tilted. He was on the ground now, his face pressed into the rough concrete, and Sasha was right there with him, her weight pinning him down, her fingers playfully scratching his back in long, teasing motions. "Get off," Marcus gasped, his voice barely a whisper. "Sasha, no, stop." But Sasha didn't stop, because Sasha wasn't his friend. She was a tiger, and tigers don't stop. Carlos heard the screams first. He was on the other side of the park, fixing a broken water line, when the sound reached him. High-pitched, frantic, wrong. He dropped his wrench and ran, his boots pounding against the dirt, his heart hammering in his chest. He knew before he got there. He knew. When Carlos reached Sasha's enclosure, he saw Marcus on the ground, Sasha on top of him. Her jaws locked around his neck now, shaking, shaking, shaking. Blood was everywhere, dark and slick, pooling on the concrete, splattered across the walls. Marcus's arms were moving weakly, his fingers scrabbling at the ground, trying to pull himself forward, trying to escape. But there was no escape. Not anymore. "Jesus Christ," Carlos screamed. He grabbed the air horn from the emergency kit, blasted it 3 times, the sound sharp enough to split skulls. Sasha's head jerked up, her ears flattening. For a moment she released Marcus just long enough for Carlos to see his face. Pale, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. Then Sasha bit down again and Marcus stopped moving. Carlos ran for the office, his hands shaking so badly he could barely dial 911. "We need help," he shouted into the phone. "Red Valley Exotic Animal Park, mile marker 7 on Route 40. Tiger attack, oh God, he's not moving, please hurry." The dispatcher's voice was calm, clinical. Is the tiger still in the enclosure? Yes, she's still on him. Do not approach. We're sending units now. ETA 12 minutes. 12 minutes, an eternity. Dale arrived, his face red, panicked. What the hell happened? He demanded, staring into the enclosure where Sasha was now sitting next to Marcus's body, licking blood from her paws, calm as a house cat. She killed him, Carlos said, his voice hollow. Marcus is dead. The sirens started in the distance, a wail that grew louder and louder until the parking lot was flooded with flashing lights. Paramedics, sheriff's deputies, animal control officers. They swarmed the park, radios crackling, voices shouting orders. But there was nothing they could do. Marcus Reed was pronounced dead at the scene, his body still inside the cage, unreachable until Sasha could be sedated and removed. It took 40 minutes to tranquilize her. She fought the dart, snarling and pacing, before finally collapsing near the back wall. Only then could they go in and retrieve what was left of Marcus. The paramedics worked in silence, their faces grim, carefully loading his body onto a stretcher and covering it with a white sheet that soaked through with red almost immediately. The autopsy report was clinical, cold. Cause of death, exsanguination and massive trauma to the neck and upper torso. Multiple puncture wounds consistent with large feline predator. Death likely occurred within 4 to 6 minutes of initial attack. 4 to 6 minutes, that's how long Marcus suffered. That's how long he lay on that concrete floor, bleeding out, while the animal he thought he'd saved tore him apart. The media descended within hours. Local news vans parked outside the gates, reporters with microphones interviewing anyone who'd talk. Dale gave a tearful statement, blamed Marcus for breaking protocol, swore the park was safe. Animal rights activists showed up with signs, "Shut down Red Valley," and "Justice for Sasha." The comment sections exploded with arguments, some people calling for Sasha to be euthanized, others insisting she was the victim, driven mad by captivity. Sasha wasn't euthanized. She was transferred to a sanctuary in Colorado, a place with acres of land and proper care. The last anyone heard, she was doing better, pacing less, eating more, almost like she'd been given a second chance at life. Marcus didn't get a second chance. He was buried on a rainy Saturday in a cemetery outside Tulsa. His daughter stood at the graveside, holding a stuffed tiger she'd won at a carnival years ago, tears streaming down her face. She was too young to understand that her father had died trying to save creatures that could not be saved, too young to understand that love isn't always enough. Red Valley Exotic Animal Park shut down 3 months later. Dale sold off the remaining animals, pocketed whatever cash he could, and disappeared. The cages are still there, rusting in the Oklahoma sun. Empty now except for ghosts and the memory of a man who believed he could make a difference. Here's the truth they don't tell you. The animals we lock up don't just lose their freedom. They lose their minds. And the people who care for them, the ones who step into those cages every day, who whisper gentle words, and pretend that love can undo years of trauma, they lose something too. They lose their sense of danger. They forget that wild things are still wild, no matter how long you've known them. Marcus Reed forgot. And it cost him everything. The last thing Marcus saw before he died was Sasha's eyes, inches from his own, beautiful and terrible and utterly empty of recognition. In that moment, he finally understood what Carlos had been trying to tell him all along. She was never his friend. She was a tiger, and tigers don't forgive. The cage door was open. Marcus stepped through, and the wild came rushing in to meet him.